Imagine, you are standing alone in a quiet, freezing field in the American South. It is the dead of night. January 23rd, 1961. The winter air is completely, unnervingly still. The only sound is the gentle, rhythmic rustling of the icy wind moving through the tall grass of Faro, North Carolina. You are entirely at peace, asleep in your warm bed, completely and blissfully unaware that you are living in the single most dangerous moment in human history. High above the clouds, completely invisible to the naked eye. The United States military is fighting a silent, terrifying, and relentless war. It is the absolute paranoid peak of the Cold War. The American government is terrified, obsessed with the very real possibility of a sudden, unprovoked nuclear strike from the Soviet Union. To prevent this apocalyptic nightmare, to ensure that America can strike back if Washington is instantly vaporized, the Pentagon has initiated a deeply classified, highly dangerous protocol known as Operation Chrome Dome. Every single day, 24 hours a day, massive B-52 Stratofortress bombers are circling the globe. They are flying high in the stratosphere, crossing oceans and continents, their bomb bays loaded with the most destructive weapons ever engineered by mankind. The men flying these planes are not on a training mission. They are waiting for a single encrypted radio transmission, waiting for the final irreversible order to drop their payloads and end the world. On this particular freezing night, a B-52G bomber with the call sign Keep 19 is flying a routine, monotonous patrol directly over the eastern coast of the United States. Inside the cramped, pressurized cockpit, Major Walter Tulloch and his crew of 7 highly trained men are scanning the dark horizon. They are exhausted, running on military-grade coffee and adrenaline, flying a 12-hour mission that stretches the limits of human endurance. Strapped securely into the belly of their massive aircraft, resting quietly in the dark, are 2 Mark 39 thermonuclear bombs. These are not ordinary weapons. These are city killers. Each one of these bombs weighs 10,000 pounds and possesses an explosive yield of 3.8 megatons. To put that terrifying, incomprehensible number into perspective, a single Mark 39 is more than 250 times more powerful than the bomb that completely leveled the city of Hiroshima. If just one of these weapons were to detonate over American soil, the results would be apocalyptic. It would instantly create a blinding fireball several miles wide, burning hotter than the surface of the sun. The thermal radiation would instantly incinerate every living thing, every building, every tree within a 17-mile radius. The resulting radioactive fallout would be caught in the prevailing winter winds, drifting silently and swiftly northward, blanketing the densely populated cities of Washington D.C, Baltimore, Philadelphia, and New York City in a suffocating, lethal ash. Millions of innocent, sleeping Americans would die. The eastern seaboard of the United States would be transformed into an uninhabitable, radioactive wasteland for centuries. But the crew of Keep 19 isn't worried about the bombs. They trust their magnificent machine. They trust the rigorous, layered safety protocols designed by the greatest nuclear scientists and military minds in the world. They believe, with absolute certainty, that as long as the enemy doesn't strike, they are perfectly, fundamentally safe. But at midnight, 10,000 feet in the air, the illusion of safety is violently, suddenly shattered. During a routine mid-air refueling operation with a massive KC-135 tanker, the crew receives a terrifying, blood-chilling warning. The pilot of the tanker radios Keep 19 with a frantic message. A massive, uncontrollable leak has developed in the right wing of the B-52. Thousands of gallons of highly flammable aviation fuel are pouring out of the fuel cells, spraying wildly into the freezing night air, turning the atmosphere around the bomber into a highly volatile, explosive vapor. Major Tulloch instantly realizes that his massive aircraft, carrying enough destructive power to wipe out millions of lives, has just become a flying powder keg. He immediately aborts the refueling mission, cuts his speed, and desperately tries to turn the crippled bomber back toward the runway at Seymour Johnson Air Force Base in North Carolina. He wrestles with the heavy controls, fighting to keep the massive beast in the air, but the machine is dying. At 10,000 feet, the structural integrity of the right wing completely and catastrophically fails. The heavy metal groans, shrieks, and violently tears away from the fuselage. The massive B-52 immediately enters a terrifying, uncontrollable death spiral. The G-forces inside the cockpit become unbearable, pinning the crew violently to their seats, making it almost impossible to breathe or move as the plane plummets toward the sleeping farming communities below. Major Tulloch screams the final, terrifying order over the intercom. Bail out. The men desperately reach for the handles of their ejection seats, blasting out into the freezing dark sky, plunging into the icy wind. 3 of the crewmen do not make it out in time, dying in the freezing darkness. The survivors watch in absolute paralyzing horror as their massive aircraft tears itself apart in mid-air, raining flaming debris across the North Carolina countryside. But the true nightmare, the apocalyptic threat that could change the course of human history, is not the falling plane. It is what the plane is carrying. As the B-52 breaks apart in the violent turbulence, the extreme centrifugal forces rip the bomb bay doors completely open. The heavy metal lanyards holding the 2 Mark 39 thermonuclear bombs instantly snap under the immense pressure. And high above the sleeping, unsuspecting citizens of the United States, 2 massive, fully armed nuclear weapons are released into the dark sky. They are in freefall, but the terrifying, deeply unsettling reality of a nuclear weapon is that it is essentially a highly advanced, mechanical flying computer. When the lanyards snap, the internal computers inside the bombs do not know that they are falling over an American farm. The computers believe, based on their programming, that they have just been intentionally dropped in combat over Soviet airspace. And so, as the bombs plunge toward the Earth, they begin their automated, irreversible arming sequence. Bomb number 1 falls away from the burning wreckage, and its onboard computer immediately deploys a massive, heavy parachute. It begins to drift slowly, silently down toward the trees. But inside the heavy steel casing, the firing mechanisms are actively, aggressively engaging. For a nuclear weapon to detonate, a strict, multi-step safety sequence must be completed. The bomb's computer checks the first safety mechanism. The arming wires have been violently pulled by the separation from the aircraft. Click. The first safety is completely bypassed. As the bomb descends, its internal radar altimeter engages, pinging the ground below to determine the exact, optimal altitude for maximum urban destruction. Click. The second safety is bypassed. The bomb's internal thermal battery violently activates, forcefully charging the high-voltage firing capacitors, preparing the massive electrical jolt needed to ignite the explosive core. Click. The third safety is bypassed. 3 of the 4 fail-safe mechanisms, designed by the smartest men in the country to prevent an accidental nuclear holocaust, have completely, utterly failed. The only thing standing between the sleeping towns of the East Coast and absolute instant vaporization is a single, fragile, low-voltage switch. A switch that costs barely a few dollars to manufacture. As the massive weapon gently tangles in the branches of a large tree, its heavy nose resting softly in the North Carolina dirt, the firing capacitors send the final lethal electrical charge to detonate the weapon. But the fragile switch, the very last line of defense, by pure, unimaginable, terrifying luck, holds its position. The bomb does not detonate. It sits quietly in the dark, fully primed, fully charged, but silent. But the nightmare is far from over. Because bomb number 2 did not deploy a parachute. Bomb number 2 is currently in a terrifying, unhindered freefall, plunging like a massive steel dart toward a swampy, muddy field at over 700 miles per hour. It impacts the soft earth with the sheer, devastating force of a meteor. The kinetic energy of the crash is so immense that it buries the massive weapon deep underground, plunging it into the dark, freezing mud of the swamp. When the military recovery teams finally arrive at the crash site the next morning, the scene is one of absolute paralyzing panic. The Pentagon is holding its collective breath. They find bomb number 1 hanging ominously in the tree, its parachute draped over the branches like a ghost. When the bomb squad, gingerly sweating through their hazmat suits, inspects the core of the weapon, they discover that the arming sequence had fully completed. The military realizes with a sickening cold clarity that they were one tiny faulty switch away from wiping out their own coastline. But when they begin digging for bomb number 2, the panic turns into a cold, lingering, existential dread. They bring in heavy machinery, they excavate the muddy, flooded crater, they find twisted pieces of the heavy casing, they find the parachute that failed to deploy, they find the arming switch, and to their absolute, unmitigated horror, the switch is turned to armed. The weapon was fully, completely ready to detonate upon impact. The only reason it didn't, the only reason the East Coast still exists, was because the violent 700-mile-per-hour crash had physically destroyed the delicate firing mechanism, mere milliseconds before the electrical charge could reach the plutonium core. But as the military digs deeper, desperately searching the mud for the most dangerous radioactive parts of the weapon, they realize something truly terrifying. The swamp water is rising faster than the industrial pumps can clear it out. The soft, muddy earth is actively swallowing the wreckage. They recover the tritium reservoir, they recover the plutonium pit, but they cannot find the secondary core. They dig 50 feet into the earth, completely desperate, tearing the field apart, but the highly enriched uranium core is simply gone. It has been swallowed by the dark, freezing mud of North Carolina. Finally, after days of futile, desperate searching, the Pentagon makes a chilling, highly classified decision. They stop digging. They realize that the core is lost to the earth. The United States military simply buys the farmland from the owner, erects a cheap chain-link fence around the muddy crater, places a few warning signs, and leaves a piece of a thermonuclear weapon capable of unimaginable destruction buried deep underground. To this day, right now, as you're listening to this, that highly radioactive core is quietly resting beneath a quiet field in the American South, slowly sinking deeper into the mud. For decades, the United States government actively, aggressively lied to the public about the Goldsboro incident. They released sterile, highly controlled press statements claiming that there was never any real danger of a nuclear explosion. They claimed that their legendary safety protocols worked perfectly. They assured the American people that they were in complete control. But in the late 1990s, when the heavily classified documents were finally dragged into the light through the Freedom of Information Act, the terrifying truth was revealed to the world. A secret memorandum written by Parker F. Jones, a high-ranking nuclear safety expert at the Sandia National Laboratories, explicitly stated the chilling reality. He wrote that the weapon lacked adequate safety mechanisms for the airborne alert role. He explicitly confirmed that the only reason the eastern seaboard wasn't wiped off the map, the only reason millions of people did not burn to ash in their beds, was the simple, blind, terrifying luck of a single, faulty switch. We build massive military empires to protect ourselves from the monsters outside our borders. We construct weapons of unimaginable, godlike power, believing that having the biggest bomb makes us fundamentally safe. We look at the sky, terrified of foreign enemies, rogue nations, and invisible threats. We trust the generals, we trust the politicians, we trust the fail-safes. But the chilling reality of that cold night in 1961 forces us to confront a deeply unsettling, horrifying truth. Sometimes, the greatest threat to our survival isn't a foreign empire or a malicious dictator. Sometimes it is our own hubris. It is our own machinery, spinning out of control in the dark. We sit comfortably in our homes, trusting the men in power, trusting the complex systems they have built to keep the apocalypse at bay. But how many other safety switches have almost failed? How many other classified disasters? How many other broken arrows are quietly buried in the muddy fields of history, waiting to be uncovered? If you are fascinated by the terrifying truths that hide in the blind spots of history, if you want to know what else is buried deep within the classified, heavily redacted archives of the world, do yourself a favor, hit subscribe and join the family. I'm your host, and you're watching Decoding Myths. Remember, the truth never really disappears. It just sits in the shadows, waiting to be dragged out.